I never really thought much about my mom's side of the family. They were distant, both physically and emotionally. We lived in a small town where everyone knew each other, but it felt like my mom's family always had something to hide. As a child, I didn't understand why we only saw them during the holidays, or why my mom would sometimes whisper to my dad in hushed tones whenever the topic of her family came up. But as I grew older, the picture started to become clearer. The abandonment, the tension, the betrayal. I could feel it like a weight pressing down on me, even though no one ever said anything directly. The air around us seemed to crackle with unspoken words every time my mom received a phone call from her mother, or worse, her new family. It was all so confusing. I could never quite reconcile the loving mother who cared for me with the woman who seemed to walk around in a constant state of guilt and resentment. It wasn't until I turned 22, during my last year of college, that I finally started to understand. The phone call came late one evening, just as I was finishing a late-night study session. I overheard my mom in the living room, her voice trembling with a mix of emotion I couldn't quite place. I had grown accustomed to her crying softly at night, but this was different. This was anger, mixed with desperation. I walked into the living room, unsure of what I might find. Her face was pale, her lips tight, and her eyes red from crying. "It's your stepdad again," she muttered, almost to herself. "They want me to make a choice, but I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending." I was stunned. I had always known about the dysfunction in her new marriage, but I never realized just how deep it went. Her voice cracked as she continued to speak. "They say I'm supposed to pick between them and you, my own flesh and blood, my own daughter." She looked at me with such pain that I felt a sharp pang in my chest. They told me I should stop supporting you, that you're an adult now, and need to figure things out on your own." As the days passed, my mom's behavior became more erratic. It was hard to keep track of all the lies and half-truths. But one thing became painfully clear: her new family had become her priority. The step-siblings she barely knew, the new husband who demanded more than he had the right to, they all began to demand more from her, and she kept giving, until she had nothing left for me. It wasn't long before my mom sat me down one night, looking more tired than I had ever seen her. "I need you to understand something," she said, her voice trembling as she wrung her hands together. "Your father, his side of the family, they're trying to take everything. The inheritance, the house. They want it all." I sat there in stunned silence. My mom was never one to talk about money, let alone inheritance. My biological father had died when I was a child, leaving behind only memories of him that felt distant, fading. But now, it seemed his death had sparked a new fire within the family, one that I wasn't prepared to face. "I'm going to have to choose, and it's not going to be easy," my mom continued. "But it's not just about the money. It's about me finding my place in all of this. I've been abandoned by my own family, and now I'm being asked to choose between the man I married and you." The tension in the house grew unbearable. The moments when we used to sit down for dinner and talk about nothing and everything had stopped. Now it was just silent meals, quick exchanges, and too many awkward pauses. It felt like I was losing my mother, piece by piece, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. My mom had begun to favor her new family's needs over mine. She paid for her stepchildren's education, despite the fact that I had been paying for my own. The house was constantly full of her stepfamily, and each time, I felt more like a stranger in my own home. She promised me that everything would be okay, but it never was. It wasn't until the day I refused to pay for my step-siblings' college tuition that everything truly came crashing down. "You have to help them," my mom said, almost pleading. "They don't have the same opportunities that you had. You can afford to help them." I stared at her, speechless. "Why should I?" I finally asked, my voice cold, though I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. "They're not my responsibility. They're not my family. You chose them over me." The argument escalated quickly. My mom's face twisted with a mixture of anger and hurt, and before I knew it, she had raised her hand. I flinched, but she stopped herself just in time, collapsing onto the couch, her body racked with sobs. "You're right," she whispered. "I chose them. I chose a new family, one that doesn't know how to love me, but I thought maybe you could forgive me." I shook my head, my heart breaking. "I can't, Mom. Not this time." That was the last straw. I moved out the next week. I couldn't stay in a house where my own mother had betrayed me for the sake of people I didn't even know. Months passed. I focused on my studies, got a job, and tried to move on. But the hollow ache in my chest never went away. I couldn't forget the way my mom had turned her back on me, nor could I stop wondering if I had done the right thing by walking away. Then one night, just as I was about to go to bed, I received a message from her. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. The message was simple. Asterisk, I'm sorry. I can't keep living this way. Can we talk? Asterisk. My heart raced. I knew I couldn't ignore her forever, no matter how much I wanted to. We met at a small cafe, the same one we used to visit when I was a child. She looked tired, more worn down than I had ever seen her. The years of neglect, guilt, and pain had taken their toll on her, and it was clear in her eyes. I don't know what to say, except I'm sorry, she began, her voice quiet. I didn't know how to make things right. I let my new family tear us apart, and I don't know how to fix it. We talked for hours about everything, our hurt, our anger, our disappointment. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. Over the next few months, things slowly began to heal. My mom didn't give up her new family, but she started to understand the consequences of her choices. She tried, in her own way, to reconnect with me, to make amends for the pain she had caused. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was something. We both had a long road ahead, and the scars of betrayal would never fully disappear, but I began to see a path forward. For the first time in years, I felt like I might finally have my mother back. And that was enough for me.